Alright, so moving on to other stuff. Size by speed, that's another one I don't use. Don't know what it does. Guess it's useful for some cases. Rotation by speed, external forces. I don't know that one, I don't use it. Noise. Noise, as you can see, it just sort of makes the particles move around in different directions. Uh, it's pretty useful when you want to, I don't know, animate like the embers of a fire. And sometimes if you ever watch like a campfire, everything is pretty much going upwards in general, but then you see these little sparks, embers, sparkles, and every now and then you'll hear this sort of little pop, and then you see a bunch of them flying up, and they always, it's kind of like they get some air resistance, so they're not just moving in one single straight direction. They kind of change direction in midair. Let's actually do this right now. So our shape is here. I can rotate my shape so that it points up. So I guess, is it in the x-axis? No, I want it to be rotated. Yeah, in the x-axis. To minus 90. So now they're pointing up. Obviously, some of those sparks are too big because they go between zero point 0.2 and 2. Let's say zero point 0.2 and 0.5. And our color is wrong because fire is not blue to greenish, yellowish. So I'm just gonna set this to something like this. I think I think there's something wrong with my screen. It's like the proper shade of yellow is hard to reach. Yeah, yeah, I guess it's gonna be different displayed on someone else's screen. I guess 1-1 is yellow. It looks like a sort of green hue for me. Uh, I don't want that color though. So I'm gonna set it like this, and maybe as it's about to die, it becomes a sort of dark reddish color. It's not the best of my effects. But yeah, now you get this sort of effect where they're moving kind of left and right. And if I disable the noise, you can see their movement is very linear. Now I enable it again, you can get a little sense of them changing direction. And you can control other settings over here like the strength. Let's put some very obvious values. So this is what a value of 5 for the strength does. And the frequency is how many times it changes direction in a way. So if I put the frequency up, now the noise is even more frequent. Well, has more frequency. And if I set it to 0.1, the change of direction is more smooth. So I'm just gonna put this back down to something like 2 and maybe 1 or zero point 0.5. Yeah, that's a that's a good movement, I think, for some fire ember. Oh, and while we're at it, burst. I was talking about how sometimes in the fire you'll hear that popping sound and then more of them spawn. So yeah, there we go. So by default it's adding 30. That's kind of ugly, but I could just say like 10. And if I want this to be more random, I could say it would happen every 3 seconds, but it would spawn between 5 and 10 of these sparks, but the probability of it happening would be 0.5, meaning that every 3 seconds there's a chance that a number between 5 and 10 sparks will spawn, or none of them will spawn. So I would say something about VFX, depending on what you're actually doing. If you're working on skills, you want to have a lot of control over your stuff. But if it's something environmental, you want to think about the long run. You want to think that, okay, if a player is staring at your VFX, and I know that players don't usually do that, but that's what I like to think. Like, if someone is really staring at your effect for a long time, are they gonna be able to see a clear pattern? Kind of like in anime, like sometimes they repeat the same 3 frames over and over. Uh, think of like Dragon Ball when they're fighting at full speed or something. They just kind of pan the characters, but all you see is like 2 key poses. So when you're doing VFX, depending on what you're trying to achieve in the look, do you want them to be able to see repeated patterns and kind of you know, see through uh, the magic, which is doing VFX, or do you want to kind of trick them into not understanding how you did that thing? That's a very bad way to explain it. But anyway, so that's why I like to add a lot of little random values that will sort of break the pattern. Um, so I've been on noise triggers. I don't want to cover collisions and triggers. Sub emitters will be for another time. Texture sheet animations too. Light trail custom data. Yeah. So I guess that covers it for the very basics of VFX, and now we can move on to actually making some firework, and we're gonna see how to create materials and such.